This is not going to be a small thing for medical schools. What they're looking for is, well, welcome to another episode of Am I Ready, where we look at one of your mapped accounts on a student and kind of look at it pretty in depth, and we'll make a conclusion about whether I think this person is ready to apply or not. So today this is February the 28th, and we are interviewing Anthony. Hello, Anthony.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Yeah, good. Now, tell me where you're calling from.
I am currently in Southern Oregon, in Ashland, Oregon,
Okay.
Southern Oregon University.
Okay, great. Now, are you from Oregon originally?
Yeah, actually, I was born and raised in Ashland, and I was looking around, trying to see where I wanted to go to school for college during my senior year. And I was applying to a few places on the West Coast, but eventually I got a lot of academic support from my hometown university through taking AP classes and stuff and having it directly be correlated to SOU, which is Southern Oregon University.
Yeah.
And also I was on football scholarship.
Okay.
Until COVID happened. And then there was some, there was about a year and a half, almost 2 years from, being able to play again. So I just kind of decided to finish the last year and a half not playing football. But those are the two main reasons. And I get free rent. So.
Oh, there you go. That's always a good thing. Absolutely. So you're a football player.
Yeah.
So what's your position?
So in college and in high school, I played slot receiver. But I've been playing football since I was like 7. I played quarterback, corner, but mainly up until I had stopped playing recently, it was I was a slot receiver.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm a huge college football fan.
That's awesome. Me too.
Love NFL, but college football is where it's at for me. And,
I agree.
But I will say, and this is an aside for all you viewers, just don't pay attention to our little chit chat. One of my favorite NFL players is Christian McCaffrey. So he is. He's a receiver, he's just awesome. Really one of those that I think opponents sometimes under anticipate what he can do. And so he's a really awesome receiver.
Yeah.
So good. So I'm sure that was kind of a downer to not be able to play football because of COVID.
Yeah, it definitely was. Without COVID, it still would have been a challenge because at the university I'm at, for example, there's one physics time slot. There's one biochemistry time slot.
Yeah.
And my junior year, I was studying for the MCAT while taking a full year of biochem and a full year of physics. Yeah. So that might be something later to talk about in terms of my MCAT stuff. But
sure.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging with COVID, doing online, studying for the MCAT, taking biochemistry and physics. So even if COVID wasn't a thing, it would have been pretty hard to miss 3 practices a week for classes and still have to travel and play in the games.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, totally understandable.
It's like one of the downsides to going to a small university is the class scheduling.
Sure.
Other than that, I'm all for small universities and small class sizes and more connections with professors and stuff, which I think I took advantage of in my 4 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very good. Well, as you know, Anthony, we're going to be looking at your mapped account. We're going to kind of evaluate, what I see there, and we'll come to some conclusions at the end of our time together about what I think and make some, just some points that you might want to consider or whatever. And any questions that you have, just ask at throughout the time together and stuff like that. So awesome. Let's look at your mapped account. And as you know, the very first thing that comes up on that mapped account when we're looking at it is the dashboard, and the dashboard includes the GPA graph, which is what we're seeing here. And what I see here is a cumulative, this is the AMCAS GPA calculation, the cumulative 3.89 and assigned or BCPM GPA of 3.82. Now, I will say right off the bat, Anthony, it's super unfortunate that you could not be a better student in the classroom. This is a real downer. No, I'm totally kidding there, but why don't you tell us what we're looking at here? You know, it looks like you've been a really good student I mean, you've got some ups and downs, but we have to pay attention to the scale. You know, the scale only goes from 4 to 3.65. So, you know, everything you've done is at or above a 3.65. So you've been very successful in the classroom. To what do you attribute that?
I think the main thing that I would attribute it to is, like I said, going to a small school. And going to a small school, when I say that, study groups, close friends, a lot hours and hours of going to office hours, talking to the professors. Those three things are mainly what it is, but honestly, time management outside of, you know, interactions with other people, time management and prioritizing, those are the two main things. And learning how to study is what I really took out of undergrad.
Right. Yeah, you obviously you did a great job in the classroom. I mean, that's what the GPA really represents for medical schools. This is a representation, that GPA, and then further, this graph of various GPAs really represents what kind of student you are, what kind of person you are that guts it out in the classroom day after day after day after day. That is, you know, at your desk, studying for exams and really putting in the effort. And so kudos to you for a good job of really doing that in the midst of everything else that's going on in your life, you know, and we're going to talk more about that as we go along. So this is a great, this is really great. I mean, this is the kind of GPA that medical schools will look at and will say, this guy's a good student. He's really shown that over the course of his time in college. He's really shown every semester he's done really well. So that, you know, this is really a very good, strong showing for a student. Now, you graduate soon, or you've already graduated?
Yeah, I graduate in June of this year.
Okay.
In the spring.
Okay. Good. Well, congrats on that. That's an awesome accomplishment. So that's great. So while we're on the numbers, let's skip down to the bottom where we have the MCAT score stuff. And let's talk a little bit about the MCAT. So we see here a graph of all your practice scores. Now I think I was looking at this earlier. Now you've taken the MCAT for real once, and that was in August last year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And let me go to the MCAT tab, which gives us the details about this. So we see this August 21st, August 27th test score from last year. That's a 504, and it looks like you've got a bunch of now, were you doing Blueprint, or you just were using their exams, or what?
I did the Blueprint 9-month program, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, I wanted to do the 6-month, but like I said earlier, I was taking biochem and physics mainly online besides labs. So that was a challenge in itself. So I kind of wanted to give myself a little bit more time. And with that being said, obviously I am a little bit disappointed in my score in terms of my overall stuff. But
right. Well, you know, what I see here when I look at these, I see that your score of a 504 is basically the average of where you were in all these practice scores. I mean, the 511 is kind of the outlier. Everything else is in the 502 502, 503, 504, 505 area.
Yeah.
Which, I that's not to take away from, the disappointment that you were experiencing, but it is to say that I think what we advise students, pretty regularly is to, when they're setting a target score or when they're setting their expectations, take an average of your practice tests, and that often gives a pretty good idea of kind of where things are. Now,
I totally agree.
have you now, are you considering a retake or no, or what are you thinking about that?
I am going to apply this cycle, hopefully. And if it doesn't work out, then I'm definitely going to retake it. I was wanting to do my retake during my gap year,
Right.
not during school, because I did it during school, and those were the results I got.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
No,
so,
totally. Yeah, totally understandable. Totally understandable. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, I think at this point, I don't see any scores. It's fairly typical, or let me just say, it's not unusual for cars to be the lowest section for. That's often the case. It looks like your car score is 123, a little bit low, but like I said, I think it's pretty regular for people to be in that neighborhood on the car score. I think it's pretty interesting that your highest score is your chemistry physics score. Now, when I was looking back at your activities and stuff, I think I noticed that you were a tutor or something in chemistry. Is that right?
Yeah. Currently, I work for the library as a bio and chem tutor, and I'm also a volunteer for an organic chemistry mentoring program that my university does. So, two tutoring activities.
Yeah. So, which doesn't surprise me then that was your highest section, because you've got a lot of experience in it. So that really does make quite a bit of sense to me. Now, in terms of the MCAT, was there anything on testing day that you surprised you, or that kind of was a little bit disheartening to you in terms of how things went on that particular day?
There were a couple minor things, but as a whole, I wasn't surprised with the test itself. My score was an accurate average of my practice tests, and obviously I went into test day wanting to get at least a 508 to a 510. Realistically, I got my average, which I can live with. Because I did the whole program and I was okay with it. One thing that really surprised me, though, I don't know if this is common, but my testing center, the computer quality was it was so different from taking it on my laptop. So when I talk to people, I'm like, take it on a desktop computer at a lower quality, because my testing center, I showed up to it and it was probably 150 years old.
Right.
and it was in the corner of this weird parking lot, and I went in and there was 8 computers, and it was just so strange. So the environment definitely was a little bit throwing me off, but the computer itself, taking it on a Mac laptop, is so different from taking it on a old PC. Desktop. Exactly.
PC, yeah. And I think that's a really good point you're making, Anthony, is that what we typically suggest is for students to try to make their practice testing situation as close as possible to what that real situation is going to look like.
Exactly.
As far as you can. And that's a good point, is the differences in computers and stuff, the difference between a laptop and a desktop. These testing centers are almost never going to have Macs. They're almost always going to have PCs. And so I think that's a good point that you bring up. And I think
just the environment in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's not anything to take away from, the score I wanted to get. I was just, it just threw me off.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, makes total sense. All right, let's get back here, and I want to go to your activities now, and kind of talk about that a little bit. And we talked, briefly about some of it. What I see here is some volunteer hours at a local hospital, and tell me a little bit about that.
So yeah, that started. That was actually my first that was in 2019. So that was when I was a sophomore, and that was when I kind of had just decided that I wanted to do pre-med. I was in organic chemistry, and I was like, okay, let's. That was when I kind of decided fully. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do, and so I reached out to the local hospital. My mom actually works there. She works at the ED as a nurse, and so I had some connections there, and I was volunteering there for a summer. Up until the fall term a little bit, and then that was right before COVID hit, and then they stopped their volunteer program, and actually, so I got like 40-ish hours there, and then just like a few weeks ago, I just got into an orientation again for volunteering, so I should be starting early this month to get some more volunteer work in the same hospital. So kind of a gap in the middle, but I wanted to do some more volunteering in a hospital up until June when I sent in my application.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think a lot of applicants are concerned about, particularly for somebody like you who really in the prime time when they would be doing some of this stuff, they were, COVID happens and you can't do anything and everything is shut down and all that. And it's a big concern for people. And what I would say about that is the medical schools understand, they were in the middle of COVID just like everybody else was, and they get it. They see that there were, some real difficulties with getting volunteer hours or getting clinical hours and stuff like that. So, I think you did a good job in doing it when you did. And then I think it's great to go ahead and get back into that. Now, when you were there at the hospital previously, what exactly were you doing?
I was guest services, escorting, transporting, delivering meal trays, updating families that were waiting in surgery, stuff like that. So there's patient contact, and there was also patient family contact, which I thought was really important too, to see that side of medicine. And
yeah, good. Great. Now it looks like you are an EMT, or you are in the process of doing that, or what?
Yeah. So I put that down to actually ask you a question. I am in the process of getting an online EMT certification, and in my gap year, my built-in gap year from when I apply to hopefully, if I get in my first year, I'm going to be working full-time as an EMT. So my experiences in my application, I don't think it would be advisable. I've heard from you and Dr. Gray that I shouldn't just put my EMT certification if I don't have any EMT work. That was just kind of put there to, when I was talking to you, to let you know, like, this is what I'm going to be doing in my gap year. And one of my questions was, I really want to let the medical schools know that I'm applying to, that I'm going to be doing this for my gap year. I'm just not sure in the primary application or whatever secondary applications I get, when should I, try and make that apparent to them that, hey, I want to let them know that I'm taking this seriously, and during my gap year, I'm going to be doing a lot of work, patient care work and doing EMT stuff.
Yeah, I don't think in the circumstances that you described, I think what you've done here is reasonable. I think that you could put it as an activity that you have gone through, or you're in the process of going through EMT certification, that your plans are to, during your gap year, to work full-time as an EMT. I don't see a problem with that. Now, what the medical schools are going to do with that, you don't have any control. But
it's word of mouth.
Absolutely, and I think it's very reasonable to put it on there. I don't think that's a problem at all.
Okay.
I would encourage you to do that. It lets them know, this is my plan. This is kind of what I'm doing, and so yeah, I don't think that's problematic at all.
How would you want me to, or how would you want a typical student in my position to write about it in 600 to 700 characters?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that it's probably going to be a fairly short description. Just say, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this online EMT certification thing. Thus far, we have, I've learned blah, blah, blah. And now, along with that certification, are there clinical hours that are required?
There are not.
Okay.
It is an online certification, so all of my I'll obviously take my registry exam, and then my practical exam is going to be through Zoom, and they're going to actually send me the props to my house that I will need to perform for my certification. So it's not clinical. It's clinical on a dummy. It's not clinical on a real human.
Well, what I would say is just describe that.
Okay.
Just as you just did for me, describe it the way you did in your application on that activity, and just kind of leave it at that. And then you would say in the activity, my plan is for my gap year, I'm going to be, working full time as an EMT, and hopefully doing blah blah blah, and etc. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification. That
helped
a lot.
Absolutely. Now, it looks like you did some volunteering at it looks like a local farmers market type thing. Is that right?
Yeah. That was kind of a summer thing that I was doing. One of my good friends was employed at at a farm in Southern Oregon, and during the summers they would do farmers markets, and so she needed some help with running the farmers market and stuff. So I volunteered, and it was basically just, running a market stand. And then after donating the food, the perishable food that we didn't sell, to an organization that we worked with called the Food Angels. And the Food Angels were linked to the food bank. But as we know, the food bank is usually non-perishable items. But every week on the weekends during the summer, they would get perishable items that they could use in ingredients to serve the needy population perishable foods, instead of just having boxed and canned things all the time. So that was kind of like a summer, like a summer endeavor that I decided to do, that I thought I would definitely add, because I put a lot of work into that.
Absolutely. Awesome.
I was happy with the outcome. So
yeah, absolutely. Got some, this is fairly common for pre-meds these days, the ubiquitous hospital COVID screener. And so looks like you did that for quite a while in 2020. And that you was taking temperatures and asking all the questions and stuff like that, right?
Yep. That was my whole summer in a nutshell, working a lot. And I thought it was a cool thing to do, since the volunteer thing was shut down during COVID. So I was just trying to find, anything that I could to work in a hospital, and it was paid, which was nice.
Absolutely. That's great. We've talked about the organic chemistry stuff, the mentoring and stuff. So we've done that, and that's great. Really, did you enjoy the being a tutor and mentor for students? Yeah,
tutoring was really fun, and it still is. I still work there, but mentoring is what really took my attention the most, honestly. And the chemistry department here, students that are in organic chemistry have a choice to register for a credit class called Organic Workshop. And the workshop mentors, like myself, are previous organic chemistry students. And so we actually lead our own workshops without the professor in a class for like a 2-hour session every week. And we kind of help them work through problems and help them with their studying, with their memorization. We're a mentor for the students, and we each have our own little group of students that we take on for the entire term, and then we it's a really cool program. And I was a mentor my junior year, and then my senior year this year I was appointed to be like the mentor supervisor, like the lead mentor role. So I'm teaching a workshop for current students, and I'm also leading a workshop for the new mentors to help them kind of fit into the job well, and giving them tips and tricks on how to teach other students.
So there's a leadership aspect to what you're doing.
Yeah. And that's actually great. That was another question I was going to ask you. This mentoring thing is a lot on like the basis of my personal statement. And it's going to be one of my most meaningfuls. My question was, if I'm going to be talking about it to a large extent in my personal statement, how do I not seem redundant on my most meaningful in my activities once I talk about it again?
So it is going to be a little redundant, particularly in the 700 characters of description. Now, what I would do with the 1,325 characters of the most meaningful essay part, what I would say is focus on a different story. So our encouragement is to, whether it's in your personal statement, on the secondary essays, or in the activity descriptions, to do that showing what you've done through the telling of stories. And so I would tell it, maybe a different story from what you did in your personal statement on the activity. Maybe it's a different student or a different situation or whatever. Or you could concentrate on the leadership aspect of it in one, and the sort of mentoring aspect of it in another. There's several different ways that you could kind of do that without it being like super redundant.
Yeah. So for every activity, we get 600 to 700 characters of a
700,
description.
Yeah, depending on, so AMCAS is 700 characters, ACOMAS is 600.
Okay.
And then for the most meaningful on AMCAS, you get an additional essay that is 1,325 characters. So it's not combined. You have a 700 character description, and then you have a different box, which is a 1,325 essay that you can talk about on the three most meaningful. So it's not it's not just I have 2,000 characters to do this in. You've got 700 and then another 1,325. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I had first thought that the most meaningful would just have the essay and you didn't need the description because it was kind of built into the 1,300. So what's kind of the main difference in terms of structure for like a description versus I understand that the most meaningful essay should be a story, but the description.
Yeah. So I think the description is really more of, this is what I do on a daily basis, or every time I do it, what I would say is in the 700 characters or the 600 for ACOMAS is that you would really focus on, what do I do? What is this all about? What does my activity look like? I do this, this, and you could include a story in the 700 characters also, a short
for the not meaningful ones.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question, was if I don't get a chance to write an essay about it, I still don't want it to be generic, and I still want to be able to, tell my story through, a personal experience in those 600 to 700 characters. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Great.
Right. Yeah. Good.
Awesome.
So looks like you've done some research. I saw a couple of parts, a research assistant job in a lab, and then looks like you worked with your biochem professor on some research as well. Did you enjoy that activity of the research part of it?
Yeah, it was great. So the one that says research assistant, that was also with a professor, but that was paid. And we got some pretty good results, and I'm actually doing that same research now for my capstone with the same professor. So I'm writing my senior project with that. And I'm probably going to include that in the description as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
Yeah.
it carried out to be my senior project, and he's going to be one of my letters of recommendation.
Yeah,
and
sure. Sure.
yeah,
Cool.
which was
Yeah,
awesome.
that's great. That's great. That is awesome. I've done some shadowing. And that is one doctor or several different ones or what?
Yeah, I think I meshed the 119 hours into all my different ones. So my first ever shadowing experience was on a rig with paramedics, and that was pretty eye-opening. I'm like this, young 18-year-old freshman. I'm like, I want to think about being a paramedic or a doctor. And then my first experience, they throw me in an ambulance, and I'm like going 80 miles an hour. I'm just like, throw them in the fire kind of thing, which is cool. But in the end, I wasn't very intrigued by the by wanting to spend my whole career on a rig and being a paramedic. I just wasn't very intrigued by it.
Sure.
And then so that I did ride along, and then I worked or shadowed with DO emergency doctor, emergency room doctor in the hospital that I volunteered at.
Right.
And I did that for some time. We're still we still talk all the time, and I still try and get as many hours as I can in. And him and I had built a good relationship, and
good.
He's willing to write a letter of recommendation.
Good. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
And then
now it looks. Oh, go ahead.
And then the other shadowing was with another DO. He's an orthopedic surgeon that's still ongoing in a clinic. So I kind of have a hospital emergency room experience and a clinic experience. Coincidentally, they're both osteopaths. I'm not sure in terms of MD versus DO. Based on shadowing them, I'm probably going to apply to a little bit more DO schools than MD schools. Also based on my MCAT score, just average wise. But yeah, it was a total coincidence. And I think that it kind of gives me a leg up in a way for DO schools if I have 2 DO letters versus MD. I don't know if that's.
Now, was that your first experience with osteopathic doctors?
Yeah, those are the 2 main shadowing opportunities that I got. Other MDs were like virtual shadowing. I think I have like 13 hours of combined virtual shadowing, but the bulk of my shadowing is with the ER DO and the orthopedic surgeon DO.
And this really does go to say something, and I want to use this as an example to all of our viewers, Anthony, and that is the concern often is with DO doctors and their ability to do whatever field they want to do. A lot of students really worry about, if I go into DO schools, am I going to be, only, is it going to be that I really am going to have to go into family practice or going to have to do, this or that, and I won't be able to go into, and here we have an ER doc. Emergency medicine is very popular these days with students. And then you have a orthopedic surgeon, a super competitive field, and you got a DO in that. And so I really do think this serves as a good lesson for you, but also for all of the students that are watching this, that DOs can do whatever they want to do. It's really dependent on you and how you perform in medical school as to what you're going to be able to do with your career. So that's a great example.
And the ER doctor was saying his residency, he was the head resident of an MD and DO residency. And he said back then he got a lot of backlash for being the DO, the DO head resident, but now it's so synonymous.
Exactly right. And it's interesting that I think for the typical patient that comes into the clinic or comes into the hospital, they don't really care if you're a DO or an MD. They just want to get better. They just want to have a doctor help them, and they often don't even know that their DO or MD exists. Great. That's really good. More leadership through being the president of your pre-med club. That's great. Or how was that?
Yeah, that's once again still ongoing, but there is it's called the Pre-Healthcare Society at SOU.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a member of it my junior year, and then I ran for the presidency for this year, my senior year, and I got elected by my
Mm-hmm.
peers. So
Mm-hmm.
that's been
great.
it's been a really cool experience.
Yeah.
We've done medical panels.
Mm-hmm.
This week we're making pediatric blankets to donate to the hospital. We do STEM game nights with all the other clubs in the STEM department. We get together and we eat food and we do trivia and stuff. It's kind of just a good experience to, be in and kind of, relax with all the other STEM students and stuff.
Sure.
One of my best friends is the president of the chemistry club. And then another one of my really good friends is the president of SACNAS, which I also have in that same thing, which is the advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in science, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
And something I relate to too. So it's really cool to be a part of, and just doing a bunch of outreach stuff and volunteer work and community outreach. It's really exciting and fun.
Yeah. Now this is all within the context of you being a varsity athlete. Let's not sort of forget about that. You play football. Mm-hmm. You are we were discussing this earlier, a slot receiver for your football team. And even though it was sort of a truncated experience for you because of COVID, this is something that, there's a big time commitment on your part being a varsity athlete and sort of balancing out those. And you talked earlier about, the importance of time management and of prioritization and things like that.
Definitely.
And medical schools will often, especially for athletes, look at that because, it does really impact the time that you have. There's a lot of practices. There's a lot of working out that you have to do and stuff like that. So that's very meaningful, I think, to the medical schools, and that the fact that there's a large time commitment is not lost on them. So I think that's great. Yeah, good. Really good. Let's just take one short gander at your medical schools. So currently you have listed 33 medical schools that you're sort of interested in. And I was looking at these earlier and my guess is that you're going to kind of pare this back a little bit.
Definitely. I have a Word doc. This actually hasn't been touched in a few months. I have an Excel Word doc.
Sure. Now you've got we were talking earlier about the DO versus MD. So you got some MD schools on here and a lot of DO schools. And it seems like you're kind of, for a couple of different reasons, really drawn to the osteopathic schools, both in terms of because of your experience with osteopathic doctors in your clinical activities and shadowing and stuff, but also because, as you pointed out, your MCAT score is a little on the lower side. DO schools often have a little bit lower average MCAT score, or they seem to look at applications. Not that MD schools don't look holistically at their applications, but I think it's just a little bit different ball game in terms of how the DO schools do that. So are you going to now? These are all over the country, so it looks like that you're not sort of geographically bound. You're kind of willing to go wherever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here since I was born. Like I said, I went to Ashland High School here in Southern Oregon, and I also go to SOU. So geographically, I don't really have a preference. I think of it as kind of like a cool experience to just go somewhere for 4 years and, make new friends and meet new people and, be in a different culture. And I think that's really important for me to experience since, if I'm going to be doing medical school, my 20s are going to be pretty hectic and not, very filled with fun vacations. So going somewhere and, just, just doing the experience somewhere else, I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I'm not, if I stay in Oregon, that's cool too. I'm not super tied down to a certain area.
Yeah, good. Well, a great attitude. I think that's an important attitude to have. Some applicants are sort of tied for a variety of reasons to a certain geographical area, and others have your attitude. I'll just go wherever I have to go.
Exactly.
To go to medical school, and I think that's a really great attitude. Great attitude to have. So let me sort of boil all this down for us here, Anthony. And what I would say here is that you've got a lot of good stuff going on in your application. You're obviously a super good student. This is not going to be a small thing for medical schools. What they're looking for are people who have the skills to be able to go to school and do school well. And you have really shown that in a remarkable way. And I think that you deserve a lot of important credit for that in terms of being able to manage your time well. And it seems like you have a really strong work ethic and a really good head on your shoulders in terms of looking at what's important and really focusing on those things. The MCAT score will be, an issue. I think anytime that you get to an MCAT score that's below a 505, it starts getting in a questionable is probably the wrong word to use, but it's a sort of a gray area in terms. It's going to depend a lot on the school, the medical school. I mean, in terms of how they're going to view that. I don't think that should necessarily stop you from applying to a school, but I think you have to have a concept there of, well, my score is in their 10th percentile or in their 20th percentile, so the chances are maybe not good, but I'm going to go ahead and apply there anyway for a variety of reasons, et cetera, that kind of thing. I certainly think that DO schools is a good option for you, particularly because of your history with DOs, but also because of the profile that I see here. I think you have a very good plan in terms of your gap year. I think now what I would say in terms of a MCAT retake, you can't wait. What you might want to do is kind of plan on a January retake, and hopefully by I would go ahead and start some study and stuff in the while you're in the cycle this year, and you're going to have a pretty a decent idea of kind of how things are going by probably I would say toward the end of the fall. So you might even want to stretch that retake date maybe until March, so that you could kind of have a good idea whether you're actually going to need to retake it or not. And then is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking of a March retake.
Yeah.
And also to piggyback on what you were saying about the schools and how you were saying like, oh, there's some schools that you might be like the 10th percentile, and a lot of the schools on my list, DO and MD, I kind of wrote a spreadsheet about like, okay, here are my statistics. Am I above average on my GPA? Am I in the middle or am I below? And I did the same thing for the MCAT. And with my score being a 504, I don't have any schools that have an average MCAT above 509 or 510.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm being realistic with myself. And a lot of the DO schools, I'm right on the average of the MCAT score. And some MD schools, I'm right on the average or a little bit lower. And I think there's 2 or 3 schools that I'm planning on applying to that has an MCAT average of about a 509 to 510.
Yeah, good. So I think that's the right way to do it. I think kind of having a realistic understanding of kind of what you're facing and stuff, having an alternate plan. If I have to if I have to reapply, I'm going to, take the MCAT again. Because really, the MCAT is the one area that I think is the weakest area for you. I think that you've got a good plan to address it. You've got a good plan to address additional clinical activities, which is, both the EMT certification thing and working as an EMT next year, but also the hospital volunteering. These are all positive things. So all in all, Anthony, I definitely think that I would go ahead and apply this year, see what happens. And just, you've got a good plan. I think you should feel good about the plan that you have, and just kind of see how things play out. And then you're going to be in that gap year for you. You're going to kind of be in the reaction mode, where you're just kind of reacting to what's happening with the medical schools. If you get some interviews, which we're going to, cross our fingers and say, yay, Anthony, you're going to get some interviews, and then you'll go and you'll do those, and you'll see how that goes, so that by early part of spring, hopefully you'll know, kind of how things have played out and what needs to happen in terms of that MCAT. And, best of all worlds, you won't have to retake the MCAT at all, which I'm sure would be not a problem for you, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be a big weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think all in all, I'm very supportive of what you think. I give you a green light to do what you're doing. I think you're thinking about it the right way. You're moving forward with it, and I'd really encourage you to stay with the plan that you've established, and go and move forward with it. And I think it sounds like a good plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds
One
like
quick
a
question
really
I
good plan.
had.
Yeah.
As you were in medical admissions,
Right.
With my MCAT score, is there any leniency in terms of my GPA, or is that a myth?
You mean balancing each other out? You mean? Yeah, it's not. That is a myth.
Okay.
They really address two different things. The GPA addresses your ability to gut it out in the classroom day after day. The MCAT is a one-time shot that says, this is what I can do to utilize the information that I have to answer thought-provoking, problem-solving types of questions.
Yeah.
So it really addresses two different things. So I do not think that the medical schools will say, well, his GPA is this and his MCAT is down here. And so all in all, we sort of balance those out. I don't think it works that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Also with the MCAT, is there any way for me to explain taking the year of biochem, taking the year of physics, going through COVID with that MCAT scores? Is there any, I don't want to use it as like an excuse, but is there any way for me to kind of like let the medical schools know like what I was doing while I was trying to prepare for the MCAT?
A lot of the medical schools on their secondary applications will have a question about COVID. How has COVID affected you? And that is a great opportunity for you to go into that type of explanation that you're talking about right there. Just say, this is kind of what 2020, 2021 looked like for me. This is what was going on. And this is kind of how things played out for me. And so there will be opportunities, most especially in those secondary essays, to be able to address those types of things.
Okay. Great.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Anthony, I really appreciate you joining us today on Am I Ready? And I hope it's been helpful, and I hope it's been a little bit enlightening for you to kind of hear this sort of evaluation of your stuff. And good luck to you this year. I hope things go well, and I'd really love it if you'd keep in touch with us and let us know how things are going and what your successes are. And good luck with the EMT thing. And sounds like you're if I was to guess, Anthony, I would say with the kind of enthusiasm and the kind of wise way that you're looking at all this stuff, I'd say that your chances are pretty good at being able to do this and go to medical school and have this be your career. So congrats, and I hope things go well.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate the support and the kind words.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.